But
I would also say that the Pakistani majority of Pakistani population is in the Punjab,
Right.
and the majority of the Christians in Pakistan live in Punjab.
Right. Okay.
So therefore, because that is the main area for Christians and it's the largest population, there's more conflict there.
Right. I understand now. That's
And
recorded.
the poverty levels are higher in Punjab than other areas of Pakistan.
Okay. Now, Bishop, you have an interesting book there. How does that book relate to what we're talking about?
It's called Hatred's Kingdom, and basically it's really defining where most of the hate has come from and affected Pakistan, and it's like a virus, Al-Qaeda, and it's really saying, hey, it's the Saudi Arabians who've really affected Pakistan negatively by importing in the radicalism and Al-Qaeda and the whole of the people need to understand that there are different sects of Muslims, and the one that supports jihad mainly, it came in not from Muhammad, it came in, although he did believe in radicalism, but the way it's interpreted now has come in from Saudi Arabia. It came in the 1930s, and it's got worse and worse. Yeah. And they've gone to Pakistan and really affected the Punjab and affected the Taliban area, and they are determined to use violence.
But Alex, what we're saying here is we're not saying that all Muslims are.
No.
You were saying that some people are hyped up and their emotions.
I mean, and I come back to the Bishop's point, because I think you made a very important point at the beginning, and that is that actually the majority of Pakistani Muslims tend to be very poor people who are surviving day by day, hour by hour, tend to have large families, and have lots of pressures on their minds.
More important things.
Yeah, absolutely. To think about. But the issue becomes, because of that, education doesn't play an important part in their lives.
Right.
And so what you tend to get is what these people are. What is happening with these people is that actually they're hearing things as opposed to reading or knowing things from a more stand back kind of perspective.
Okay. Yes.
They're actually involved. So what happens is when you go to a local mosque to pray, you hear a chant from the Imam, and you think that's it. That's what's happening.
Okay.
And so what tends to happen is these people, who aren't in and of themselves bad people, but because of the way they've been brought up, because of general attitudes to education, etc., and the importance of the religious system in their survival, they have difficulties in actually relating, as it were, to people. So they may have Christian friends, but the difficulty is that when they go to the mosque, they still see them as enemies. And that's because of the preaching that's...
I mean, one of the things is, like you say, because they're poor, they can't afford school, so they go and attend a madrasa, which is a religious school, really. It's not really training them or teaching them anything else but religion.
Yeah.
So that's all they're getting.
And that's free.
And that's free, and that goes from the imams.
Okay.
Now, because the poor people can't afford to educate them any other way, they're sent to a madrasa where they're taught things by the imam. Everything he says is true.
Right.
The sharia that he says is true, which might not be.
Yes.
Whatever he says is right.
Okay.
And so they follow that.
Right.
If I can add something to that as well, it's very similar to the old way that the Catholic Church used to operate, where people didn't have that personal ability to read the Bible, or in particular for the Muslims, read that Quran. So when they hear something being said by the Imam, for them that's the word of God. They don't have that chance to actually read the Quran and understand how to discern between what's right and what's wrong. Right. Their discernment comes from what that Imam tells them, and that's causing the problems because without a personal understanding of what the precepts of their faith are, when these calls are made for violence, they assume that it's that religious fervour that's what they should be doing as a matter of course as part of their religion.
Right. I mean, what happens is they're taught the Arabic and taught to read it, but they're not taught to understand the Arabic.
Okay.
So they're taught to read it and they're reading it, but in general they don't understand what it means.
Yes. Bishop, that's an interesting point they're making there. What do you think to that? Because
Well, I think education, taking them out of ignorance, is the most important thing, because really, until they begin to educate them, you're going to have problems. I mean, I go up into Kashmir, right up into the northern provinces, and you know, I went into a war zone without realizing it, and you know, the war was going on, and the Al Qaeda were coming down and shooting people, and but God kept us. But the fact is, I was the first person, Westerner, since 1960 to go up there and preach there and teach the pastors. And they walked 8 hours to 12 hours to get down to the meetings from Pakistan. So there is people who really want to know God and want to, you know, be involved. But what we have to face is the fact that education is essential, and we have to bring education to all the peoples there. And what they've got is a real problem in their schools with illiteracy. And I'm sorry, but I disagree with your statistics, because the Muslims are having a real problem with literacy, as well as the Christians, as well as the minority religions. So their kind of propaganda of, you know, how well they're not doing well at all.
But
According,
only 50% of Muslims are literate also.
No. They're not nearly that much. It's much lower.
And you're right about that. I mean, the
I
issue...
I know your country better than you.